So many of you might know I like to self-study philosophy. I don't have a qualification or anything like that. I don't have a fancy degree. I just read books and I'm like, wow, great job, Immanuel Kant. I wish I thought of that myself, right? And something that comes with this is like almost, and this is one of the things I like about just the fact that I just read this stuff in my free time and I don't have any formal training, is like I almost have my own dumb little rules of what I think of makes a good philosopher versus one that I don't put as much stake in, right? And to me, the big thing, the hugely transcendent thing is having the ability as a philosopher to think beyond the world around you. Like, can you genuinely envision a radically different world and imagine from that, right? This is obviously not an original thought of mine. This is not my own, I'm not the only person ever to have this rule. This is a very common thing. A lot of philosophy, especially like David Hume, is being like, what are our assumptions about the world around us? How do we kill those assumptions? How do we get through there, right? This is a very common thing in philosophers. But especially one of my rules, because of the thoughts about a question I've had for a while, right? I think this is a question that's fairly natural to be caught up on when you're young, especially as you're going through like your teenage years, kind of discovering yourself and being like, man, what kind of a person am I? What do I think about these things? Are humans inherently good or bad? And I've discussed this question here before, not from the lens of any sort of genuine philosophy, but just from the lens of like, I think it is overall good to be optimistic about human nature. I think it's just like a good thing to do. I think it's a better way to live, yada, yada, yada. You guys get the gist. You can go watch that other episode if you want that explanation. But I want to discuss here this actual question and the way that I kind of looked at it philosophically. Not I looked at it, but came to understand it philosophically through Hobbes and Rousseau specifically. That got me to be like, this is something I think is integral for a philosopher to have, this ability to outthink the world around them. So when it comes to the question of human nature, Hobbes is the guy, and I'm going to be putting this all in very simple terms. If you want to do more research on this, I highly implore you. I think it's one of the most interesting parts of philosophy, especially because it's something we can all relate to, being humans ourselves. Sorry to alienate my alien listeners. Hobbes is one of these guys that says, no, humans are inherently greedy. Humans, they're like doing bad stuff, and they both talk about this state of nature, right? This state of nature is this idea of just like humans running around in the woods. Like when we all know this guy in our life who's like, man, humans are meant to be in the jungle, throwing spears at like cows or something. Are there cows in the jungle? Where are all the cows? Wait, we got to move on from that. I'll spend a whole episode on cows. No, we all know that guy who's like, the humans are just meant to be walking around and naked in the plains and in the desert, and this modern society is not how it should be. We've all met this guy before, right? Some of us might even be best friends with him. I think that's the best way of understanding the state of nature. Of course, in their own philosophical dialogues, they don't set it up quite exactly like that. Hobbes and Rousseau, they're pretty smart guys. They set it up a little bit better than the guy at the bar you meet, but that's the gist of it, right? This idea of humans pre-civilization. What does that look like? Really interesting question, because that's where they say, in that reality, when we have no civilization, we have no society, are humans good or evil? And already I want to check off a thing for both of them, right? This whole state of nature thing is real good, I think, because it gets down to something that's really useful, of saying no assumptions, right? Humans might be bad right now. Let's, just for argument's sake, say they're bad right now. But if you place anybody in like, let's say find like the worst area, the area with the most crime, the most bad stuff going on, place anybody there and just like, beat them up, throw them on the street, you're going to get them to be bad, right? And that's unfortunately what the world does to a lot of people, metaphorically and sometimes even literally. So I think it's useful to be like, let's imagine humans before all this, before they had all this civilization, making them be all whatever they're doing now, right? Great job. Check to both these guys. Great job, Hobbes. Great job, Rousseau. From there, though, they go very different directions with this, right? Hobbes is the start of this, right? Hobbes which is the explanation that I think a lot of people find themselves agreeing with, and I find unfortunate because I radically disagree with, but I actually agreed with it first. I think that's an important caveat to give. I used to agree with Hobbes' explanation when I was like 15, when I was kind of first getting into this stuff. He's really who I was like, this guy's got it right. He was like, in the state of nature, humans are even worse. Like, he was like, humans are greedy, humans are gonna, you know, if we were all in a state of nature, you would just be picking up a rock and throwing it at the guy next to you. First of all, Hobbes, I gotta say, it's a little bit of a self-report. I think, at least. Like, I think anybody who's like put me in the jungle and I'm going beast mode either is an unserious person or a little bit weird, because like, I'm not going beast mode now in New York City. Why would I be going beast mode in the jungle? Like, I don't know, I find that a strange thing. But his idea is that humans are even worse, and that the reason that we have things like government, and Hobbes was in favor of the monarchy at the time. It was very in vogue to do kings and stuff. So he was like, the reason that we do monarchy and we have all this strong government stuff is because we need that, right? Like, yeah, people might be bad out there right now sometimes, but you better believe that without all this really strong governance, it'd just be chaos, right? It'd be the worst thing. It'd be terrible. So I think this is where most people are like, this is good, right? Oftentimes you'll even hear this paired up with like, I think the world's set up great because it chimes into people being greedy and out for themselves and overall bad people. And that's why I think it's great that the world is set up the way it is, right? This is a very common thing you hear. I think it's very appealing, right? Because I think that there is within all of us a little part that like wants to appeal to the bad part of ourselves, right? Like, just in the same way that like when it's 3 a.m. and you're like, man, I'm hungry, I want a midnight snack, you always reach for the Doritos instead of, you know, the veggie tray or whatever. I think morality oftentimes does function in the same way. And I think that's something important to notice here, because I think that at least in the modern day, you know, we're here in the year 2025, we've had at least 500 years now of being subjected to society, at least in the modern form that we take. I do think there's a part of all our brains that want to go to this lazy morality, that want to just go, I'm out for myself, it was good for me, right? And not have to think any deeper about our actions, because I think that's an easy way to live. And I think that that's why this explanation really appeals to people. I know it's why it appealed to me when I was 15, because I've always been an overthinker, and I was like, this really quells my overthinking. If I can just think everybody else is out for themselves too, and I get to be out for myself, there's nothing to think about anymore. All I have to do is act, right? I think it's a bad thing though. I think it's a really bad thing. Partially, I think I started thinking this because like, I was just like, feels a little bit pessimistic about our own humanity to be like, we're all just terrible. Secondly though, I think there is an argument that Rousseau makes here in his writing Discourse on Inequality. By the way, I should say, I think Rousseau is probably my favorite philosopher ever. I'll say that probably about a bunch of philosophers though, eventually, by the end of this series, because I have like a new favorite every day. But I think Rousseau is like I'd say he's like almost my primary inspiration, because I think he's awesome because he went through so much in his life. He did have a very tough life, and he never quite had a place to call home. And I always think it's so interesting when, rather than being somebody who has all these ideas because they had a kind of a cushy life, which a lot of philosophers did, you know, they had the opportunity to go study at a prestigious university. He went through a lot. I think that's always a good thing. I always like that. But I also think it's great because he came out of going through all this hardship with an extremely positive view on the world around him. Rousseau really does. He's one of those philosophers, maybe the philosopher, who has this very, you know, he thinks of freedom in this glistening, beautiful way, and I think it's awesome, right? I highly recommend Discourse on Inequality if you're interested in any of this stuff, right? What he says is basically, humans are inherently good. That in the state of nature, if you go back in history, we were able to like figure out this good thing for a while, right? And that's what we should focus on, right? And that's true. Rousseau actually does have historical ground here of like, for a while, when we're traveling in tribes, when we're in this state of nature, like actually in history, we were able to hold it down and be generally good for a long time. Of course, there was a huge, you know, I mean, we had just had spears, we didn't have iPhones. It was obviously a very regressive time in comparison to now, at least technologically, medically, scientifically, XYZ, you know. But he says it was good. There was happiness, or whatever you want to say, right? He says that it got bad, though, once we gave into one little thing. Once the first human made a comparison between him and another guy, that's when inequality starts. And from there, it spirals into what it is now, where it's trained into us to focus on that part. And he says that what we need to do in order to be good, right, is not so much to be like what a lot of people say, the Hobbesian route that I used to prescribe to when I was a lot younger, of being like, everybody out for themselves, just focus on that part of you. Just focus on that. The best thing, if everybody does what's best for themselves and is out for themselves, it'll rise up everybody because they'll all be doing what's good for them, right? Rousseau says that's a terrible idea. And that is a terrible idea, honestly. I mean, that's very Randian. I don't like that idea at all. What Rousseau says is that the real thing we need to do is actually try and shut down that part of ourselves over all the other parts and use that to guide how we do things. Because humans are inherently good, but comparison is the root of all evil that has ever come since. Once again, I will say that I don't quite agree with the idea that humans are inherently good or evil. I think we're very complicated. I think there's way too much going on in all of us to be like, that guy's good or that guy's bad, right? For most of us. So I don't love the premise of the question already, but I think the answer is good. And I think this is where I get my idea of good philosophers are able to think past the world around them. Because what Hobbes did was, I think, a crucial mistake. He looked at the world around him with all this inequality and all these terrible things going on, because there was a lot. I mean, you know, you're in like England or wherever he was at in the mid-dark ages, basically. You're like, it's not good. It's not a good time to be doing stuff. Bad, right? So he was looking at all that and he was like, this would be so much worse if we had no law and order. And we can actually almost say that history has proven him wrong, right? Because he was like, the reason that we needed this king guy is because we need the strongest fist up there to slam down on everybody else and shove down all this bad stuff and just, you know, let things play out as they're playing out and make this law and order really tough to stop us evil humans from being human, right? He's been wrong, right? We've progressed significantly and the average way of life has gotten much, much better since we did a less restrictive thing, right? So he's been proven wrong by history in that regard. I mean, if you want to take his ideas still and be like, there is an element of humans that is greedy, there's basis for that. But what he did is he looked at the world around him and projected those observations onto the world behind him that he was trying to imagine. Whereas Rousseau looked at the world around him, looked at the world behind him, and said, how do we get here? And I think that ability to imagine a reality fundamentally different from his own, and actually not go, things are like this, so they ought to be like that. He actually was able to think past the world around him and come up with what I think is the right answer. A revolutionary conclusion, right? And that's how I think I separate the people who are saying things they see from saying things that they really thought about. That's how I decide what philosophers I like. Not that any of you asked. Yeah, this is a weird topic. I feel like this is a strange, kind of like out of left field. I feel like it's almost too much into just like, what books have I been reading? No, but yeah, so I don't know. Hope you guys got something out of this. I think a lot of the people who would be watching this are interested in philosophy, so I don't know. Hopefully that's good. But either way, that's enough of that. This is the painting. Pretty cool, and this is the last time with these colors, guys. Yeah, I know. Get the tears out while you can. It's been fun with these. I really like these. But moving on to a new palette tomorrow that's very, very exciting. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. I mean, obviously, as much as I have my own opinions on this, there's no objective right answer, right? It's not like we can just like ask God, be like, so are we good or bad, right? There's a lot of different varying perspectives on this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are humans inherently good or inherently evil? Till next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This has been Paint Talk episode 191. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.